The US and Canada share more than just a border. They're deeply intertwined economic partners whose daily trade is worth billions of dollars. Every day, goods and services flow seamlessly across the world's longest undefended border, fueling both nations' economies and supporting a standard of living that's the envy of the world. This relationship isn't just about numbers, it's about people, communities, and the shared prosperity that comes from decades of cooperation and trust. This partnership supports millions of jobs, stretching from the auto plants of Michigan to the bustling ports of British Columbia. Workers in both countries depend on this cross-border trade for their livelihoods, whether they're building cars, growing food, or providing high-tech services. The economic ripple effect touches nearly every sector, from agriculture and energy to technology and retail, making the US-Canada trade relationship a backbone of North American prosperity. Their supply chains are so tightly integrated that a single car's parts may cross the border 6 or 7 times before final assembly. This level of cooperation allows companies to specialize, innovate, and deliver high-quality products at competitive prices. It's not just cars. Everything from fresh produce to advanced electronics benefits from this seamless movement, making both countries more competitive on the global stage. For decades, this partnership has been a model of international cooperation, giving businesses the stability they need to invest and grow, while offering consumers more choices at better prices. The trust and predictability built over years have allowed both nations to weather economic storms and adapt to changing global markets. It's a relationship that has fostered innovation, created wealth, and strengthened the social fabric on both sides of the border. But recently, this stability has been shaken. Aggressive tariffs and trade barriers have disrupted industries, forcing factories to slow production or even shut down. Workers and business owners alike have faced uncertainty. As the once predictable flow of goods is interrupted, the impact is felt not just in boardrooms, but in everyday lives. Lost jobs, higher prices, and communities left wondering what the future holds. The US decision to impose steep tariffs on Canadian goods marked a dramatic shift in this long-standing relationship. What began as a policy move quickly escalated into a cycle of retaliation, with both countries imposing new barriers and tensions rising on both sides of the border. The headlines tell a story of uncertainty as leaders scramble to protect their economies and workers brace for the fallout. To truly understand the stakes, we need to look at how this conflict began, the forces driving it, and why it threatens to redefine what prosperity means for North America. The future of millions depends on the outcome, making this more than just a trade dispute. It's a turning point for two nations and the global economy. The trade wars spark. The Trump administration doubled tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium to a staggering 50%, citing national security. For Canadian producers, the US is the main market. This move threatened entire communities and thousands of jobs. Financial markets tumbled, fearing a broader conflict. President Trump argued tariffs would protect American jobs and force companies to bring manufacturing home, dismissing concerns about retaliation. The move was seen in Canada as economic aggression, not negotiation. Canadian companies faced canceled orders overnight, and leaders had to respond forcefully. The era of quiet cooperation was over. Retaliation was inevitable. Canada hit back with $22 billion in retaliatory tariffs, targeting U.S. products from bourbon to cheese, aiming to pressure key American states. This response came during a political transition. Mark Carney was set to become Prime Minister, but both outgoing and incoming leaders stood united. The message: Canada would not be bullied. The tariffs were both economic and political, showing rare national unity. The risk was escalation, but doing nothing was seen as worse. For decades, disputes were settled quietly. Now, the conflict was public and high stakes. Canada's counterpunch ensured both sides would feel the pain, setting the stage for a tense showdown. In May 2025, Prime Minister Carney met President Trump at the White House to de-escalate the trade war. Tensions ran high and the world watched for a breakthrough. The meeting took a bizarre turn when Trump suggested Canada could avoid tariffs by becoming the 51st state, a proposal Carney swiftly and firmly rejected. Carney's response: "Some places are never for sale, Canada's not for sale, ever." The exchange became a rallying point for Canadian sovereignty. But the core issue, tariffs, remained unresolved, with Trump refusing to back down. The summit ended in deadlock, deepening the rift between the two nations. Ontario, often called the economic engine of Canada, found itself at the epicenter of a growing crisis. The province's prosperity has long depended on its robust manufacturing sector, especially the auto industry, which is deeply intertwined with cross-border supply chains stretching into the United States. When the trade war erupted, Ontario was hit harder than any other region in the country. Factories that once bustled with activity suddenly faced uncertainty, and the livelihoods of thousands of workers hung in the balance. The looming threat of additional U.S. tariffs on cars and auto parts cast a long shadow over Ontario's future. Plant closures became a real possibility, and the fear of widespread job losses spread quickly through communities that rely on the auto sector. Families worried about their next paycheck, and local businesses braced for a ripple effect that could devastate entire towns. In response, Premier Doug Ford's government announced a sweeping $22 billion stimulus package. The plan focused on shoring up infrastructure, supporting affected industries, and building economic resilience for the future. It was a bold move, designed to send a message that Ontario would not back down in the face of adversity. The stimulus aimed not only to protect existing jobs, but also to modernize Ontario's industries. Investments in advanced manufacturing, technology, and retraining programs were rolled out, giving workers new skills and hope for long-term stability in a rapidly changing economy. As the crisis deepened, the trade war quickly became the defining issue in Ontario's upcoming election. Political parties from across the spectrum promised to defend local workers and industries, making economic security the centerpiece of their campaigns. Rallies, debates, and protests filled the streets, reflecting the anxiety and determination of Ontarians. The impact wasn't limited to auto workers. Dairy farmers, small manufacturers, and local markets all felt the squeeze as costs rose and access to key markets shrank. For many, the trade war was not just a headline. It was a daily struggle to keep their businesses afloat and their families secure. Through it all, one thing became clear. Ontario's fate is deeply tied to decisions made far beyond its borders. The crisis underscored just how interconnected the province's economy is with the United States, and how vulnerable it can be to sudden shifts in international policy. For President Trump, tariffs were a tool to correct what he saw as decades of unfair trade hurting American workers. He believed short-term pain was worth the long-term gain of revitalizing U.S. manufacturing. The administration justified tariffs on national security grounds, bypassing Congress and acting swiftly. Trump dismissed market fears and insisted no argument could change his mind, especially on autos. The trade war was framed as a fight for American sovereignty and jobs, resonating with his political base. Even close allies like Canada were not exempt from this hardline approach. The trade war's real victims? Ordinary workers and businesses on both sides of the border. In Canada, steel and aluminium workers faced layoffs, while U.S. companies relying on Canadian materials saw costs soar. Retaliatory tariffs hit American farmers and manufacturers, cutting off key export markets. The auto industry, with its cross-border supply chains, was especially vulnerable. Tariffs at every step drove up costs and threatened jobs. Consumers paid more for everything from cars to canned goods. Small businesses struggled to adapt, and uncertainty made planning nearly impossible. The human cost lost jobs, shuttered businesses, and families caught in a conflict beyond their control. The 2025 trade war pushed U.S.-Canada relations into uncharted territory, marking a dramatic shift in a partnership that had long been celebrated as one of the world's most stable and mutually beneficial. For decades, the border between these two nations symbolized not just geography, but a deep trust and shared prosperity. Suddenly, that trust was shaken, and the world watched as two close allies found themselves at odds. What was once a model of international cooperation now faced its toughest challenge yet, as leaders on both sides struggled to balance national interests with the legacy of friendship. The sense of camaraderie that had defined U.S.-Canada relations for generations was replaced by uncertainty and suspicion. If both sides remain entrenched in their positions, refusing to yield or find common ground, the consequences could be far-reaching and long-lasting. Trade barriers, once unthinkable between such close neighbors, could become the new normal, disrupting supply chains and everyday life for millions of people on both sides of the border. The economic fallout would be felt in shuttered factories, lost jobs, and rising prices, forcing painful adjustments for businesses and families alike. Diplomatic ties, too, would be strained as frustration and blame replaced the spirit of partnership. Yet history has shown that even in the darkest moments, economic pain can become a powerful motivator. Leaders may be compelled to return to the negotiating table, driven by the urgent need to restore stability and protect their citizens' livelihoods. In seeking compromise, both nations have the opportunity to rebuild trust, mend old wounds, and chart a new course for their relationship, one that acknowledges past mistakes while looking toward a more resilient future. But even if tariffs are eventually lifted and agreements are signed, the scars of this conflict will linger. The sense of security that once defined the alliance has been shaken, and memories of lost opportunities and broken promises may not fade quickly. In response, Canada may accelerate efforts to diversify its trade, forging new partnerships with Europe, Asia, and beyond to reduce its reliance on the U.S. market. This shift could permanently alter the economic landscape of North America. The episode also exposed deep differences in how the two countries view trade, sovereignty, and their place in the world. The controversial 51st state proposal, and its resounding rejection by Canadians, underscored a desire for independence and self-determination that runs deeper than economics. These debates highlighted a gap in values and priorities that goes beyond trade policy, revealing the complex and sometimes fragile nature of even the closest international friendships. The US-Canada alliance has been tested and in many ways transformed by this ordeal. Its history is now marked by both triumphs and trials, a testament to the enduring but evolving nature of their bond. It's a powerful reminder that even the closest friendships can't be taken for granted, and that trust, once broken, takes time and effort to rebuild.